All right, welcome in, guys. Farzin Vasukin here with you for another episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. It is Monday evening, September the 9th. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you enjoyed your first season of NFL Sunday. I'll tell you what, I really do enjoy those Chiefs free Sundays. I love NFL Sundays, but when the Chiefs are playing, especially if it's like a 12 o'clock game, I can't really focus on the other noon games. And if they're playing a 3:25 game, I can kind of pay attention to the other games, but I'm also doing like all the pregame stuff leading into the game. So it's always nice to be able to enjoy that Chiefs free Sunday NFL action. And there were some good stuff. And as usual in these week one games, there were certainly some surprises, and the biggest one involving the Chiefs' week 2 opponent, the Cincinnati Bengals. We will get into that a little later on because we've got a guest on this podcast. Very excited to have on Serhan Dayi. He is going to be joining me on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. He does a lot of great stuff with Cincinnati sports content and also some combat sports as well. So he's a really good guy to talk to, and we will have him on later in the podcast to talk about this Chiefs and Bengals matchup and just some concerns. We'll definitely get into that the Bengals Patriots game, as well as some other week one stuff. Boy, that game really surprised. I got to eat some crow here because I said straight up that the Bengals could have won that game without T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow if they had to rest all three of them. And boy, that did not age well. Not age well in the least bit. And there are a lot of people in Cincinnati concerned. A lot. And by the way, my comment somehow made it into like a Cincinnati Bengals fan group. They all agree with me. Imagine that. What is happening in 2024? Cincinnati Bengals fans are agreeing with me? What? When did that start happening? Oh, I tried to tell you guys. Hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. It's too damn bad, though. A lot of things to talk about here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. If you guys haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. Let a friend know. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. That would be greatly appreciated as well as we get the numbers on that up. I appreciate everyone who has subscribed so far. A lot of new subscribers to the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. We're starting to use that more and more. Had it last year, just got really lazy with it, but doing a lot more of that this year. So thank you guys who have subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, I just commented with the link right there in the chat. So please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. Okay. Like I said, we'll get Serhan Dayi on the podcast shortly. We'll also recap week one of the NFL, some interesting takeaways from week one, as there is every single year with week one. But we have to start with breaking news, and more so an incident off the field involving a former Kansas City Chief, Tyreek Hill. I'm sure you all have seen at least some clip out there online. And the body cam from one of the Miami police officers was just released an hour before we went live on the podcast. For those who don't know, Tyreek Hill, and I don't think it's been confirmed the exact violation, but there was a moving violation of some sort that Tyreek Hill received. Again, I've seen the rumors online. I don't know what exactly is true, what's been confirmed, what's not been confirmed. But Tyreek Hill was pulled over for a moving violation on his way to the Miami Dolphins Stadium, Hard Rock Cafe Stadium, as they're getting ready to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, that ended up being a very interesting game. But before the game, just 3 hours before the game, Tyreek Hill gets pulled over, and there are clips of him, being pinned down and aggressively being pulled to the ground, to the curb, as the officers were telling him to take a seat. And that was very interesting. Drew Rosenhaus, the agent for Tyreek, who was in the car with Tyreek, he was trying to explain everything in some of the interviews, and you could tell he was just, he was shook up. Drew Rosenhaus, I mean, that's not a guy that's like at a loss of words. I mean, a lot of agents are not like that. But Drew Rosenhaus, of all people, man, he was shook. That's not a guy who gets shook often. And there have been a lot of stories about Drew Rosenhaus. 60 Minutes. They did a nice nice little project package on Drew Rosenhaus. Dude, that guy does not have lots of words, and he kind of struggled with the interview, and I don't blame him. I'm not shaming him for that. But I've always been in the camp, and I think we saw this with Tyreek Hill, coincidentally, several years ago in an incident where we weren't quite sure what was going on in his private life, that he was being recorded. We only saw partial parts of the audio recording that was published. But Tyreek Hill, he was later to be cleared of any wrongdoing. And I just kind of thought to myself, I said, look, I want the body cam footage from one of those police officers, because that's going to answer a lot of my questions. And they calmly approached Tyreek Hill. And I have to say, I think Tyreek Hill, he did one thing wrong that led to all of this escalating. Tyreek Hill did roll down his window and was talking to the police. It's a little hard to make out what's being said, but the police officer whose point of view we're seeing all of this from, he steps aside and he goes, "It's Tyreek Hill." Like, you can hear him say that. So they know who Tyreek Hill is. Tyreek Hill is the number one player in the NFL. He just received the award for number one player, voted on by his peers. So everyone knows who Tyreek Hill is. He's a very recognizable figure in the NFL, especially in Miami. So for whatever reason, though, Tyreek Hill rolls up his window, which I don't agree with him doing that. And then the cops keep banging on his window, which very, very expensive vehicle there. And he's asking them not to do that. So then they're threatening to break into the window, and they're going to pull Tyreek out of the car. Tyreek ends up opening the car, and they just yank him out, immediately pinning him to the ground. Knee on the back of on Tyreek's back there, and they immediately put him in handcuffs. And even the guy, kind of curses at Tyreek a little bit. The police officer, that is. If you guys have seen the footage from the dash cam, not dash cam, body cam, excuse me, the police officer that's got the sleeve tattoo, he's the one that's kind of, being very aggressive, both verbally and physically with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is in handcuffs. Another police officer just has him on the curb, asking him calmly to sit down. And Tyreek saying, "Hey, I just had knee surgery. Give me a moment." I'm not exactly sure when this knee surgery was, or if he really meant that or not. But then the police officer, who, again, was verbally and physically aggressive with Tyreek, just comes up behind him, puts him in like a quick chokehold, and brings him down, slams him down while Tyreek is explaining that he just had knee surgery. And then a couple of Tyreek Hill's teammates on the Dolphins, Calais Campbell and who was the other Miami Dolphins player? There was another Miami Dolphins player. I completely forgot who it was. But Calais Campbell and another Miami Dolphins player, they see Tyreek Hill getting arrested as they're also trying to make their way to the stadium. And by the way, I don't know exactly where the location of this is, but you can tell they're not too far from the stadium, because there's a lot of traffic. A lot of people are getting to the stadium. You can even see some fans walking in the background, and they're in Dolphins jerseys. So this can't be too far from the stadium. In fact, I'm looking at the footage right now. There's the stadium in the back there. You can kind of see it in the background behind all those trees. So the bushes and the trees there. So yeah, they're not too far from the stadium. But for whatever reason, so Calais Campbell and another Miami teammate, they approach the situation and they're trying to figure out what's going on. One police officer, again, the police officer whose point of view we're seeing with the dash cam. Yeah, I just said dash cam again. I'm sorry. Body cam. He approaches Campbell, and they've got a calm conversation going on. Like, there's nothing that's escalating at that point. But the police officer who dragged Tyreek out of the car, slammed him to the curb, all that stuff, the guy who escalated this whole thing then further than it should have gone, goes up to Campbell, basically just shouting like Campbell just did something horrible, and is lashing out at him, is threatening to put him in handcuffs, threatening to go get his license plate, and is going to write all that stuff down, write him up, all these things. It turned out that Campbell ended up being in handcuffs. It's unclear for how long. Eventually, Tyreek Hill was let go. Of course, he played and had a big game. Campbell was also let go as well. But Yeah, this was not a good look for Miami police. It did come out later that Sunday afternoon, right at the tail end of the Dolphins game, that the police officer, one of the police officers, had been put on leave. I think, I think there's going to be a lot more than just putting someone on leave. I mean, Miami police has a lot to answer now. This is not a good look at all. Listen, I know there's been such a big discussion about police officers and how they deal with these certain situations. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about this in the last like 8 years, 9, 10 years. So I want to be very clear that being a police officer is not very easy. You go into situations and you have no idea if the person's going to be cooperative and calm, or if they're going to create some sort of a dangerous situation there. You just never know. And police officers always walk into that door of unknown. So I want to be very clear. Like, I mean, I'm all for supporting police officers in what they do, because it is not easy. It's not something a lot of people want to do, and it's a scary matter. It really is. At the same time, I do think that there needs to be some awareness, and there has been over these last 10 years about these kinds of situations. Tyreek Hill even said himself, what if his name was not Tyreek Hill? I know this has also been brought up in the last 24 to 36 hours. What if that was not Tyreek Hill? What if that was Tom Brady? What if that was Joe Montana? What if that was Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce? Do you think Travis Kelce would get treated like that one bit? There's no way in hell it would happen if it was Kelce or any of the four guys I just mentioned, or anyone, Drew Brees, anyone of that top tier status. There's just no way. But Tyreek Hill, he is of that status. But we've seen these situations before, and I know that there are people out there who disagreed with how NFL players try to present awareness about this, doing it during the national anthem. And if you disagree with it, fine. I think people can rationally disagree with how that was, how people were trying to bring attention to this. I think you can rationally disagree on that. But what you cannot disagree with and refute is the message that was being sent. 100%. You cannot debunk or diminish the message they were trying to send, regardless of your opinion of the people who were doing those things. You just can't do that. And that whole matter with Tyreek Hill, man, just not a good look. I would imagine Patrick Mahomes is going to be asked about this in Wednesday's press conference. They don't have practice tomorrow. So I know Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Dolphins, he had a very powerful speech on this in his press conference. And he was very choked up. And just talked about the togetherness and all that stuff, and was praising Calais Campbell for his involvement and all of that. But I think in all these situations where we've seen police brutality, we haven't seen this happen to someone notable, someone famous, if you will. And we just saw it happen, roughly 36 hours ago with Tyreek Hill. And I think when it happens to someone of certain prominence, that is when the discussion is going to ramp up. We saw what happened 4 years ago in Minnesota with the George Floyd situation, and that became a huge deal. Now, 4 years later, we're looking at this Tyreek Hill situation. Again, Tyreek Hill, obviously a much bigger figure, a much better well-known name, a very recognizable face in the NFL, especially in that city of Miami. I mean, listen, obviously, like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they're treated like God in Kansas City. I mean, everybody loves those guys. Tyreek Hill was treated the same way here in Kansas City. Now in Miami, even though Miami has not had any kind of postseason success, the way that Tyreek Hill is treated there is no different than how Travis Kelce is treated here. The only difference is Travis Kelce has more of a international superstar power to him than Tyreek Hill does, but that doesn't matter in that city. Now, regardless if that's Tyreek Hill or if that's, the average Joe that works a 9-to-5 job, that should have never escalated to that point. And I want to be very clear. I said this earlier and I'll say it again. I don't think Tyreek Hill should have rolled up his window. That's why I was very patient to wait for the body cam, because I think that would have showed us a lot of details and information that we needed to see. I don't think it's been confirmed what the moving violation was on Tyreek Hill's end. But man, something needs to look. And I'm seeing some of the comments here. I'm all for, one set of rules for everybody out there. I'm 100% in favor of that rule, but we know that's not how it works. And we can have a debate about that all day long. But that's a discussion for another day. The bottom line is there's no reason that should have ever happened. Again, regardless if that's Tyreek Hill or not, or if that's just a fan that's, trying to make his way to Hard Rock Stadium, that should have never happened. That was hard to watch. That was definitely hard to watch. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I know Drew Rosenhaus in his interview, he talked about wanting to lawyer up and all of that stuff. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm very interested to see what Mike McDaniel says next, what Tyreek Hill says next. Tyreek Hill did an interview with NBC Nightly News, so this is already a very big deal, and that was before the body cam footage came out. I'm very curious if former Chiefs teammates are going to speak up on this, and other NFL players, especially those who took part in that Black Lives Matter video 4 years ago. Very, very curious to see how all of that goes in the coming days. All right, we'll be back in just a moment. Serhan Dayi is going to join me in just a minute here. Football season is here now, and if you guys want to check out the Chiefs, the Jayhawks, the Wildcats, the Tigers, or any other NFL or college football team, you can do so by getting your tickets through SeatGeek. I like SeatGeek because they keep you very honest. Anytime they have their ticket prices listed, they'll put a green dot next to ticket prices that are worth spending money on, and if resellers have ticket prices listed too high, they'll put a red dot next to those ticket prices, so definitely avoid those tickets. And by the way, for those of you that are looking for a little extra bonus here, I have a promo code you can use if you're a first-time customer of SeatGeek. Enter my promo code FARZINE at checkout, and you will save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, pick your tickets, and at checkout, new customers can put in my promo code FARZINE and save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. All right, very excited to have on the podcast right now. He does a lot of really cool content on his social media, especially surrounding Cincinnati sports and also combat sports. He does a show called Serhan on X, Serhan Dayi. Very excited to have him on this podcast tonight. Serhan, thank you for joining me. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself over there in Kansas, Farzine?
Good, man. Good. I appreciate you taking time to join me tonight. Obviously, you got the Cincy hat on. I know there's always a lot of high expectations for the Cincinnati Bengals, and obviously there's a big Week 2 matchup here. These two teams always play way late in the season. It's always in January and December. So for them to play very early in the season definitely feels a little weird. But I know there's a lot surrounding the Bengals with the way they started. And over the last, I guess 5 years, and I keep hearing this stat. I guess the Bengals are 1-10 with Zach Taylor the first 2 weeks. But there, I just felt like that game yesterday, and I know the Bengals were 9-point favorites, the biggest point spread in Week 1, and they completely laid an egg. I just want to know, you've had more than 24 hours to reflect on that game. How do you feel about the Bengals coming out of that game?
Well, there is zero excuse for the effort they put yesterday. There was no sense of urgency when the Patriots offensive line came out and smashed the Bengals defensive front in the mouth. Because that's what essentially happened. Because, the cry out here, because last year the Bengals defense were dead last in the league in yards allowed per play. I mean, it was a ridiculous number. I mean, you guys saw it out there in Kansas toward the end of the season. It seemed like they were just going through the motions, but still no excuse for a team that's supposed to be a supposed, quote, challenger, end quote, to you guys for the AFC crown to lay an egg against a team like that, especially on your home field when you had a star quarterback like Joe Burrow, who finally went through a full training camp like he did this season for the first time, and just to simply play it more like it's like a take what was given approach and not even try to do anything of significance to to go out there and actually try and win. It's like they were trying to take what's given, and they thought what was given was going to be good enough. And it doesn't help that you had a drop touchdown in the end zone, a fumble by a tight end as he was going into the end zone, and of course, Stevenson, the running back for New England, just running it down your throat, play after play after play. It's coming, and you still can't stop it. It was just an embarrassing, pathetic performance yesterday. And any excuse people try to make, I'm not going to listen to it, because it is beyond inexcusable. Because if that happened to another team, the media will be all over the place. And right now, the Cincinnati media day after is starting to light it up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the numbers here, and I've been kind of following this even closely because these two teams are going to be playing in 6 days. You mentioned Ramondre Stevenson. He had a hell of a game. This guy did not have a 100-yard rushing game last year. In fact, I think it's been 16 or 17 games he last had a 100-yard rushing performance. When you look at his day, he had 118 yards after contact, and he forced 10 missed tackles. That is the most of any running back in week one. Now, obviously, we got 49ers Jets happening right now, so maybe that changes. But even then, that's still, pretty rough. And on top of that, when you look at the Bengals defense in general, they missed, I think, 13 tackles, according to Pro Football Focus. Again,
Yes.
prior to this week one game, only Jacksonville and Denver had more, and they had 14. So as of things stand right now, pre-Monday Night Football, the Bengals have the third most missed tackles in week one to open up the season. I remember watching the Bengals defense last year, and they were not very good. And I know you already alluded to some of those numbers. And I know the Bengals focused a lot more on the offensive line, necessarily, understandably so, which they kind of missed on those so far to start off the year, but they did not put any effort to try to fix that Bengals defense. What do you make of the effort trying to fix that Bengals defense and how it looks so far 1 week into the season?
Well, last year, the only person that showed up on defense was Trey Hendrickson, and everybody else just took a vacation, it seemed like. And even yesterday, he wasn't even anywhere to be found either. They tried to they let DJ Reader walk, but they tried to replace him with Sheldon Rankins, and that didn't turn out well either. I said all along 3 years ago, I got a last minute draft free agent named Larry Ogunjobi, not the greatest name in the world, but to help solidify that defensive front. They did a poor job trying to replace him as someone next to a Sheldon Rankins, as they don't have one of those we call a three down defensive tackle to help out the defensive front, because outside, if you can slow down Trey Hendrickson, might as well forget it. That defense might as well forget it. They try to go to the draft with Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, but he injures his thumb in the preseason, and they drafted some unknown named McKinley Jackson, which nobody here even knows who he is. It was the only thing they did was stock up the secondary by bringing back Von Bell, who spent a year in Carolina, and they added Geno Stone for Baltimore, trying to solidify that secondary, but still doesn't. But still, they did a poor job not addressing that defensive front, where all year long they were gashed last year. And you saw in week one, it was the same story. I thought I was watching last season all over again on a carbon copy, because that's what it essentially was.
Yeah. To me, I'm looking at Isaiah Pacheco, whose best single game rushing performance in his 2 years plus one game in the NFL so far was against Cincinnati last year, when he ran for 130 yards, also had a touchdown through the air. I think at 35 additional yards through the air. So his best game was against the Bengals last year on New Year's Eve, where the Chiefs clinched the AFC West, and the Bengals at the same time were eliminated from playoff contention. I know Pacheco has not looked good in his last few games, but man, I got to tell you, me personally, I'm really optimistic that he could have a field day. The Chiefs really do like their fullback Carson Steele, who had a very good preseason. Now, can he carry that over into the regular season? We'll see. You guys obviously know about Samaje Perine. He certainly hurt us a few years ago when he was wearing the orange jersey there. But now he's in a Kansas City uniform, so he knows how to break some tackles and get loose there. What do you make of that matchup there with those Chiefs running backs and fullback against this Bengals rush defense here?
Kansas City would be wise to go jumbo and just pound it down their throat, just steal the New England playbook from last week. By the way, Samaje Perine is going to be a hand and glove fit for you guys over there. I mean, he's going to play that Jit McKinnon role you guys have.
Yeah.
Just take the watch the replay of what Stevenson did. I mean, the defense, the missed tackles are just absolutely a joke. I mean, there were those missed tackles. There were some where they have them lined up straight right in front of you, and he still couldn't tackle Stevenson. I'm just sitting here watching this like, what in the world is going on here? Because these guys just can't tackle worth the darns, especially when you consider the fact when you get to that second level, you might as well forget it because the linebackers were non-existent on Sunday. And it's probably going to – and if you guys just pound it down with your guys, Pacheco, Steele, and P. Ryan, it's going to probably be the same thing. Now, of course, you have Samaje P. Ryan, who knows our defensive schemes very well, will probably be probably a good asset for you guys, which I don't think you guys are going to need. It's no secret that our defensive front is just awful. But I think you guys, it's going to come down to whether they can actually our defensive front can actually step up and actually, I'm not going to say stop, but at least hold their own compared to what happened last week to at least make this game remotely close.
I do want to switch over to the other side of the football because, and look, whenever injuries come up, I don't like to speculate on that kind of thing. I'm not a doctor. I never treated the injury or evaluated any of that stuff. But there have been a lot of people in the national media that have been talking about Joe Burrow and how his wrist is looking and how rough it is, and maybe he's not going to feel very good coming back. At one point during the game, they did show the CBS cameras, that is, and I think Evan Washburn, who was a sideline reporter for that game, they were showing him just kind of warming up the wrist, just kind of doing some exercises on the sidelines there. And I don't imagine that's normal protocol for any quarterback to go through. So I'm sure you saw that. What was your reaction, and how much do you think that's impacting Joe Burrow? Because there were hardly any big plays through the air for Cincinnati's offense yesterday.
I think maybe a little worse than what they let it on. I know they put up to the training camps through some, if you will call it, the NFL's equivalent of, quote, load management. They try to manage his wrist because that I know Burrow said himself a couple of times he's going to have his own days with it. Again, I can't excuse the fact that they only had, I think, like maybe 2 plays at the most that's gone past 15 yards.
Yeah,
because someone got it a stat. The average pass plays that he had just in terms of attempts is barely 6 yards of pass play. That's just inexcusable with a quarterback like that and the receiving core, that we have over here. When you talk about the guys that we have now, of course, we know the contract situation with Jamar Chase. That's another topic for another day. But he didn't really show up much himself either Sunday. And of course, we had T. Higgins out, but still. They don't even test the New England secondary. Maybe twice, I recall correctly. Once was a pass interference, and once was a long catch by Chase. But that was it. Whether the wrist might have something to do with it. I can go by my ISO. I didn't think as much of it as everybody else is, but it still doesn't help the fact when he was on the sideline. When he got, I guess he threw it and it hit someone's helmet. From what I understood, he was actually shaking his wrist a little bit on the sideline as of that CBS footage showed. So it might have something a little to do with it, but it's still inexcusable to not at least take shots down the field against a New England secondary with the offensive personnel they have.
Yeah, especially when they traded Matthew Judon, their best player that was with them until a few weeks ago, and again for Cincinnati to kind of look like that without Matthew Judon on the other side of the ball was very surprising. Obviously, you mentioned Jamar Chase and his contract situation. We know about T. Higgins and kind of what he's going through. Obviously, they can't do anything now because he's under the franchise tag. That is what he's playing under, but did not play in this game, and we've yet to kind of mention his name. And Adam Schefter on ESPN on the Pat McAfee show mentioned that he would be surprised if Higgins did play this Sunday against the Chiefs. Hollywood Brown, Andy Reid did hint, is close to coming back. I'm not 100% sure if he plays because, having not practiced or done anything for more than a month now, or close to a month. I know the Chiefs don't like that kind of thing. They don't just want to throw someone into the fire just with 3 practices under their belt since the injury. I would not be surprised if he practiced but did not play. But you can't really dismiss any of that. So we'll see how the Chiefs feel in terms of how comfortable they are with Hollywood Brown. But just in general with the offense, what is your comfort level going up against the Chiefs defense? Because, they lost Snead, so an opportunity with or without Higgins that maybe they can make a game out of this, but given the concerns from that week 1 game, what do you make of that?
Well, it's going to come down to whether the offensive line can stop the defensive front, because you saw in the 2022 AFC Championship game that you guys won, that the pass pressure just broke down, and Spagnuolo just disguised coverages and basically just got Joe Burrow train wrecked to the behind the line of scrimmage. Again, it starts there as always. My comfort level, I'd probably say between 1 and 10. I'd probably say about a 5. I think they'll be a little better this week because I can't see them looking that bad again. But it's going to come down to whether or not I know it's been we beat this dead horse all the time here in Cincinnati. Whether the pass protection can hold up, because because last week they weren't necessarily. I know PFF had their ratings. They weren't necessarily as great as people thought they were. They just lucked out because New England didn't have any real pass rush to challenge them. And I think Kansas City is going to be the ones going to really challenge them this week. So they're going to have to hold their own and try to keep Joe Burrow upright, just to try to give him at least time to throw the balls down or make the passes necessary. The only thing we have, maybe it might help a little bit, is we did get Zach Moss from Indiana, who actually was in limited carries, was very solid. That's probably the only thing. They might have to try and balance it out. That's probably the only solution I could come up with all of this. But other than that, it's going to come down to whether that O-line again can hold up against your defensive front, which is one of the better ones in the league.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the Bengals offensive line. Obviously, they got Orlando Brown, who we're familiar with. He's got a championship under his belt. They got Ted Karras from the Patriots. He's got a championship. I believe Trent Brown also has a ring. Yeah, I think he does. Yeah, he's got a Super Bowl championship under his belt. Alex Kappa from Tampa Bay against the Chiefs won a championship there. So they've got a lot of guys that have a championship, but guys that just haven't really been very good in the NFL. And so far, Trent Brown's been off to a rough start. I know they drafted Amarius Mims, who's dealt with some injuries and has been unavailable so far for the Bengals. But that should be a very interesting battle to watch. I'll tell you what, that's where I think the Chiefs are going to cook the most, is that battle against Cincinnati's offensive line there. Hey, my last question to you, Serhan. You got a score prediction for this one yet?
I think as you said, I think it's going to be another close game. I think Cincinnati can't look. It's hard for them to look as bad as they did yesterday. So I think it's going to be closer. But I'm leaning toward something in the area of, I'm going to say 31-24 Kansas.
Okay. All right. Kansas City, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Just the firepower you guys possess right now is just going to be a little too much for that defense to withstand. They'll do their part to keep it competitive as long as possible.
All right.
I'll say that.
Well, Serhan, I do appreciate you joining me here on the podcast. If you guys want to check out any of Serhan's work, go to @Serhan on X. It's spelled SERHAN, Serhan on X, formerly known as Twitter. Hey, Serhan, this is a lot of fun talking to you. I enjoy your content on your social media, and I've checked your live streams a few times here and there. It was good to finally have you on and talk to you. Hopefully we can do this again down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Farzin.
All right. Appreciate it, Serhan. You have a good day. Take care. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast. Patrick says all of these guys on the Bengals are counting their money. You know what's interesting? I was listening to Adam Shine from Shine on Sports on Mad Dog Sports Radio. And I love listening to the national media, and I'll also tune into like some of the local stations, depending on like some of the big stories that are going on around the NFL. Just kind of see the reactions from the local media there. But I love to hear the national media. Adam Shine was talking about, the Bengals, and the Bengals have been getting a lot of shit from the media so far today. The national media, that is. They're definitely like the big surprise from week one, for sure. And Adam Shine said that T. Higgins should just play for himself. You just worry about yourself this year. Even if you want to sit out, fine. Just get ready to go make money elsewhere, because it doesn't seem like it's the case. I'm not really too familiar with the whole Jamar situation. I'm a little surprised it didn't happen now, but I'm just kind of thinking, you've spent a lot of money and resources on that offensive line. And that's how your offensive line looked in week one. I mean, listen, it's not like these offensive linemen, they're running routes or they're, trying to separate a defense or any of those. You're just blocking. And I'm not here to say blocking is easy, but it's not, this insurmountable task that's going to, be so different when you go to a completely different offense. It's just not. I don't care what style of offense you go to. You're just simply pass blocking. And it's been kind of rough for the Bengals, and for all of the upgrades they thought they made. Again, it's just one game, but we don't have many games in the sport of football. I think people forget that sometimes. And look, I was listening to what was it, ESPN 1530 in Cincinnati after the game, because I really wanted to hear the reactions. Dude, nobody is sugarcoating anything. I mean, the sky is falling in Cincinnati. There's one caller who called into that post-game show, and he was doing the whole Burrowhead, we're going to win over there, that's our house. Like, only one person called in and did all that crap, which, you would think by now you would be humbled by now, but only one person did that. Only one person. So, yeah, they are not feeling optimistic at all. I mean, they're not doing the a majority of them. They're not doing the Burrowhead thing. They're not doing the Burrow versus Mahomes head-to-head record, which is 3-1 in favor of Burrow. They're not doing any of that. They're not. And I had some really strong comments about their game, talking about how I don't care who was unavailable, who was holding in at practice, all of that stuff. There is no way you should have played like that. That's an embarrassment. And a Cincinnati Bengals fan decided to screenshot my comment and shared it on a Bengals Facebook fan group, and they all agreed with me. I mean, I don't know what the purpose was to get an opinion from a Chiefs fan. I guess, getting an opinion from a Chiefs fan is very important to Bengals fans. But I guess, I wasn't sure if you wanted people to respond and like poke fun at me and come after me. I got the complete opposite. Everyone's agreeing with me. I've tried telling Bengals fan, and our guest Serhan, who was very kind to join us here, he's one of the more logical Bengals fans. That's why I had him on, because he knows his shit, and he's not, crazy like a lot of these other Bengals fans that just blindly think their team's the best and all of that stuff. But man, I'm looking at these comments here. They're all agreeing with me. So it was not on my 2024 bingo board for Cincinnati Bengals fans to back me. Not that I ever need anyone to back up my opinion on anything ever, but to see them finally listen and understand, and the offensive line, specifically with Orlando Brown, I told you so. I mean, I had Bengals fans tweet me last offseason saying that if they had Orlando Brown sooner, they would have had 2 or 3 Super Bowls by now. Really? You think one offensive tackle fixes everything? No. I mean, listen, I've said this before, because I've had Bengals fans come after me and say, you guys offered him a big contract. Yes. Brett Veach, who I think is an amazing general manager, he has not got it right every single time. And his worst move as a general manager was offering Orlando Brown that 6-year, $120 or $30 million deal. I will stand by that forever. That is Brett Veach's worst move. Thank God Orlando Brown declined that, because that was not his 2 years in Kansas City were just not good. And I saw someone else say this before. If Orlando Brown was such a great, all-pro player and all this stuff, Pro Bowler, I don't think he's ever been all-pro. Maybe as a right tackle with the Ravens he was, but if he is such a great player, why is he playing for his third team in 4 years? I mean, that just doesn't happen. The reason he wasn't allowing sacks in the postseason is because Jerick McKinnon, who is much smaller than Pacheco and Pirine, he stepped up and got involved in the pass blocking there. So I find that very interesting. Yeah, that week 1 game, man, I don't do survivor pools or fantasy football anymore. Survivor pools are kind of fun to do. I've thought of getting back into that, but man, sometimes I just forget to like enter my team and everything. If I was in a survivor pool, I would have 100% picked the Bengals with absolute confidence. And again, what was it? They were 9-point betting favorites. Boy, and here's the crazy thing. The Patriots did not really play that well. Hey, look, I am not in favor of taking credit away from anyone. When you win, you win. When the other team makes hapless errors, you capitalize on that. The Patriots did exactly that. This is a team that was, 4-13 last year? No Belichick, no Tom Brady, and they found a way to beat the Bengals. And at this point, you can't sit here and say, it's just week 1 and week 2. We always start slow. No, this was the freaking Patriots, a team that might not win a lot more games the rest of the season. I have them being one of the worst teams in the NFL. I sure as hell did not think they would win a low scoring battle like this. And if the Bengals do not improve, and I'm sure their coaching staff is kicking their ass this whole week trying to get them to play better. But if they don't wake up from this, I don't think you can really lie on this. Oh, we had a slow start, again. You just can't. Because if we're going to go off patterns every year, well, then this franchise has never won a Super Bowl. So I guess it's going to end the same way it has in the 60 some odd years this franchise has been around. I mean, we got to be realistic here. You play these games for a reason. You lost to the Patriots. It's very unlikely you beat the Chiefs. So you're going to be 0-2 to start the season. And both of these are conference games. So that can have some massive tiebreaker implications if the Bengals do find a way to dig themselves out of this hole and make it to the playoffs this year. And listen, the AFC North, I know people have talked about how difficult of a division that is. Well, the Bengals lost, the Ravens lost to the Chiefs, of course. The Steelers won. Who's the other AFC South team I'm forgetting? Or not AFC South, I'm sorry, AFC North. This is not good. I can't remember the other AFC North team. The Steelers? The Ravens? Oh, the Browns. Yeah, the Browns laid an egg against the Cowboys. So, yeah, they're all 0-1 except for the Steelers. So, they do have time to get it together, but I think a lot of people would bet that the Ravens get it together pretty quickly as well. By the way, other week 1 reactions, why not just stick with the AFC North since we're kind of talking on that? I'm not too surprised about the Steelers in what happened there. I think a lot of people thought the Falcons would win. The Falcons were like some people's underdog dark horse team. I don't know, man. I'm just not sold on the Falcons yet. I'm really not. The Steelers, on the other hand, whether it was Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, I feel like they could have handled this, but their offense was really a non-factor in this game. They went out there and kicked, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 field goals. Yeah, that sounds very, very familiar if you're a Chiefs fan. Unfortunately, that was one of the more embarrassing playoff games. I mean, listen, the Chiefs have had some embarrassing playoff games. That one was just rough because you scored 2 touchdowns more than the other team, which was 0. But boy, that was a rough way. Le'Veon Bell had his way with the Chiefs and couldn't score a touchdown. But let's not go over that too much. We've got good things happening now in Kansas City. As far as the Browns go, so the Bengals are getting a lot of like the negative reactions on Monday. The Browns are right next to the Bengals here. And I just want to say this because there is a report out there that another sexual misconduct allegation is being brought up against Deshaun Watson. I think if you're the Browns, you just have to accept the fact you made the wrong move. And listen, I like Baker Mayfield. I really, really do. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback. But man, that dude is always going to battle for his team. And I feel like he was doing so many good things for Cleveland. I really felt like Cleveland just gave him the disrespectful middle finger and said, F you, we're going with Deshaun Watson because we can. And he had a really rough go where he was with the Panthers and that didn't work out. He went to the Rams and had that nice come from behind win against the Raiders on 2 days notice, which we all enjoyed. And now he found his way to Tampa Bay where it seems like he's comfortable and he's found a home. And I'm really glad to see that. Tampa Bay said it won a playoff game last year. And by the way, this is the guy replacing Tom Brady, okay? And the Browns, on the other hand, that might be one of the worst contracts ever handed out. A lot of people are saying that the Russell Wilson trade is one of the worst trades in NFL history for the team that received Wilson, being the Broncos. That might be. I think this Browns move here, trying to get Deshaun Watson and giving him that big deal, that might also be a terrible move. There are a lot of people who are lighting up Deshaun Watson. And of course, it came out later Monday that another sexual misconduct allegation came out against him. So, yeah, that's the quarterback. And Dak Prescott, he wasn't that great either, but he didn't need to be. Like the Cowboys they thrived on all 3 phases. So if you're Cleveland, have fun with that little circus there. Well, let's go to the AFC West. Let's start with the Broncos, where they kind of had a weird game where they had 13 points before halftime. 2 of them were safeties. I don't think I've ever seen a team get 2 safeties before. I'm sure it's happened before. Actually, now that I think about it, not that it's an NFL game, but when I was a student at KU and I was working for the student newspaper, I was looking up the history between KU and K-State. And there was a game where KU, I can't remember who won actually, but the final score was 4-3. How many of you guys have ever heard of a 4-3 score before? A 4-3 score. And that was like in the early 1900s. But anyway, it just kind of reminded me of that. But the Seahawks, they figured things out in the second half. Geno Smith got going. I know I'm kind of down on the Seahawks, but I feel like their players are getting a little older there. So we'll see what they want to do and trying to bounce back. The Chargers and the Raiders. So the Raiders did get a touchdown early in the game. After that, all they got was a field goal. Max Crosby got a sack early in the game, but he was going through the middle of the Chargers offensive line. The rest of the game, Max Crosby lined up against Joe Alt, the son of former Chiefs offensive lineman John Alt. And my God, I know he's a rookie, but I guess he's no ordinary rookie because Alt completely owned Max Crosby in this game. Max Crosby could not get anything going. He did not get a single pressure when he was lined up against Alt. And I'm not here to say that Max Crosby is washed up or any of that. No, I still think Max Crosby is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. But my God, he ran into a monster of a rookie in that game. That dude might not even be considered a rookie anymore after this game. That's how good he looked against Max Crosby. It's always like, when an offensive lineman or an offensive tackle specifically is going up against a top tier pass rusher, it's like, all right, good luck. Welcome to the NFL. Nope, not for Alt. Listen, I've debated this so many times before, and I've argued this. I think it's stupid that offensive linemen never get considered for like offensive player of the week or rookie of the week awards. I don't know who's going to win rookie of the week to start off the season. It might be Xavier Worthy. It might not be. It should honestly be Alt. It really should be him. There's no reason why it should be anybody else. This guy just owned maybe one of the best, top 5, clearly best pass rushers in the NFL. There's no reason you should have ever done that. No way. But we'll see. We'll see what the award givers want to do this week. I do want to go to the Friday game. Packers Eagles. I actually enjoyed this. I enjoyed watching Friday night NFL games. Look, I'm at that age now where, my Friday nights don't consist of nightclubs and bars and beer and all that good stuff. Those were in my 20s, and those days are long behind me. So I enjoy a nice Friday night in. I would not be upset at all. And listen, I don't mind Thursday games. I know players are not very privy to it. But I would not mind if the NFL decided to have Friday night football games. I think this was a test. I know the NFL does have a Friday night Black Friday game. They did it last year with the Dolphins. They're doing it this year with the Chiefs and the Raiders. So I'm very curious to see if, depending on the ratings and all these things, if this is something the NFL wants to go forward with. I would not be against that one bit. You got a Thursday night game, got a Friday night game. Saturday, you can enjoy your college football. Obviously, later on in the season, when college football, the regular season ends, that's when the NFL starts doing some Saturday games. Then obviously got NFL Sunday and then Monday Night Football. I kind of hope the NFL moves in that direction. I would not mind having some NFL action on a Friday night. No, not one bit. Another game I want to get into here, the Bills and the Cardinals. My friend Eddie Law, who's been on this podcast many times, he and I were texting back and forth. Man, I just felt so bad. Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of a non-factor. That's the player I was really looking forward to the most of any rookie outside of Xavier Worthy. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. He only had one catch, I think, for just 4 yards. Josh Allen had some issues here, and the turnovers are still kind of a thing with him. But man, give credit to him. They surged, they bounced back, they scored 24 points to come back and beat the Cardinals. Because at halftime, the Cardinals were up on the Bills, the Dolphins were down to the Jaguars, the Patriots were up against the Bengals, and people wondered, which one of these would stand the most. I think a lot of people thought the Cardinals would would be the team that would hold on to their lead. Obviously, it didn't end up being the case, and the Bills just surged in that second half. Listen, I've been very critical of Josh Allen and his turnovers, and I think he's got to get better about it. I still think Burrow's the second best quarterback in the NFL, given his injuries and everything he's going through right now. And again, availability is the best ability. If this becomes a thing, I think Allen is going to gradually surpass Burrow as the second best QB, obviously after Patrick Mahomes, but he's got to take care of the ball. Those turnovers are not acceptable. I know he's got a high scoring rate, but he's also got a high turnover rate. You can't win football games doing that. And if he can do that, yeah, I can give him the benefit of the doubt of possibly dethroning Patrick Mahomes one day. But until then, Goodwin, got to take over. Got to take care of the football. Got to take care of the football. Texans Colts ended up being a much better game than I anticipated. I'm not quite sure what to expect from Anthony Richardson going through that injury last year as a rookie, but man, he came back. He slinged it out. Him and CJ Stroud. That was a fun duel between two very young quarterbacks. And the best part, we get to see it again later in the year. I don't know exactly when they play. That better be a primetime game because I mean, those two, I could watch those two play forever and ever. That was a fun game to watch. That was one of my least, the games I was least like interested in the most. But man, it just got interesting as the day went on. So glad to see that be as exciting as it was. Dolphins and Jaguars. We already talked about Tyreek Hill in his day. But his day on the field, boy, was huge. And that really helped because he had that 80-yard touchdown catch and run. The longest of his career. He had a couple of 75-yarders with Kansas City. Never had anything longer than that. So he had his 80-yard catch and run touchdown play that really helped pull the Dolphins close to the Jaguars. And eventually they tied the game. And then they won the game as time expired there. Panthers Saints. I don't know, man. I mean, it's one game, I get it, but the Panthers, they just can't figure it out. They just can't. Vikings, Giants, kind of nice to see the Vikings. Look, I know there's a lot made about Daniel Jones. I do think if you're the Giants, you got to start looking elsewhere. You just got to admit that contract was a mistake. And let's talk about this for a moment because Dak just got his deal. What is up with owners and general managers giving in? Because all these college football players right now that are playing quarterback, they have to be working their asses off. They have to be inspired by the fact that Dak freaking Prescott, who has a 2-5 playoff record, just earned himself a monster deal, the highest paid deal in NFL history. I remember Derek Carr, who never won a playoff game, but before he left the Raiders, Derek Carr not once but twice broke the NFL record for highest contract in NFL history. If Derek Carr can do that, if Daniel Jones can hit the bank, if Tua can hit the bank, if Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, if all those guys can hit the bank, dude, these college QBs have to be inspired by that and have to be working their asses off just to make sure they can get to the NFL because they know that they don't have to be the best. They don't have to be Mahomes, Burrow, or Allen to get that kind of contract. You just, I guess, got to have some value to your franchise. That's all you need. That is all you need. Yeah, me too, Stephanie. I wish they would have taken care of business against the Bills, but listen, I'm not ready to write off the Bills yet. A lot of people were kind of writing them off this offseason. Not me. Serhan is still watching with us here. He says the Deshaun Watson trade to Cleveland is quickly becoming the worst trade in NFL history. Only one close was Herschel Walker trade to Dallas. Yeah, that might be. Patrick says the Browns turning on Baker Mayfield the way they did after played with an injury. They're a-holes. Yeah, man. That is karma. That is karma right there. Serhan just said the same thing. Yeah. Last game I do want to go over real quickly was the Sunday night football game. And I'm laughing because it went into overtime and the team that won the coin toss just marched down the field. I made a little joke on the internet. I said Kyle Shanahan is probably confused as to why the Rams never got the ball because of the way they thought the overtime rules worked. And listen, Kyle Juszczyk looked at the NFL Films camera. He goes, I did not know that they get the ball even after a touchdown. So yeah, that was not good. I love the game. I thought that was a great game. I'm a huge fan of Matthew Stafford. I love that offense that they have there in LA, but they cannot catch a break. I mean, Cooper Kupp came back. He had an amazing game. Demarcus Robinson, former Chief, good to see him. He's contributing here. He's kind of turned into a journeyman, but he's still, doing some big things here and there. Puka Nacua, dude, I was just heartbroken seeing that. I was so excited to see this Rams offense with Stafford, the running game that they have, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson. That offense, I was very excited to see, and they just can't catch a break. Cooper Kupp got hurt last year. Puka Nacua hurt now. Man, that is just an unlucky group. They really are. I mean, at least they got a Super Bowl out of this. But Puka Nacua was not a part of that team. But man, I just felt like the Rams really did have the tools in place to make it there. And listen, the season's not over. Puka Nacua could come back, and he's expected to come back. But man, I hated seeing him go down. I loved what we saw from a guy. There's always something about guys who get drafted late, like Isaiah Pacheco, and just how well they play. I mean, teams just love to get behind that kind of thing. They just do. Fans as well. It's always fun to watch. So it was a bummer to see him go down. But the Lions, they took advantage of the overtime rules in the regular season, and they won. By the way, I know hockey does this too, where it's 3-on-3 in the regular season for overtime, but in the playoffs it's 5-on-5. Why? I don't get that. I don't like when there are different set of rules in the playoffs. I hate that. If you're gonna have a set of rules for overtime, it needs to be the same for both the regular and the postseason. But that's just my opinion. That is just my opinion here. I do want to go back to the Tyreek Hill story here, because the Miami Dolphins just released a statement. In fact, let me try to go pull it up. For those who are on the video version on Facebook and YouTube, you guys can see this along with me here. For those who missed it, the body cam footage did come out, and it is not a good look for the Miami Police Department, and they're having to answer a lot of questions on this Monday evening here. Let me zoom in. Jonnu Smith, by the way, was the other player. I completely forgot his name, so I apologize. Jonnu Smith was the other guy. Can you guys see that? Yes, you can. We are saddened by the overly aggressive and violent conduct directed towards Tyreek Hill, Calais Campbell, and Jonnu Smith by police officers before yesterday's game. It is maddening and heartbreaking to watch the very people we trust to protect our community use such unnecessary force and hostility towards these players. Yet it is also a reminder that not every situation like this ends in peace, as we are grateful this one did. What if I wasn't Tyreek Hill is a question that will carry with a resounding impact. That is 100% true. We are proud to have a strong and positive relationship with the Miami-Dade Police Department and other law enforcement agencies, and recognize that the vast majority of officers do serve the community with the utmost character and desire to protect all citizens. I'm glad they said this. Like, you can't let one bad apple be like the representation for the bunch. You can't do that. It'd be like, it's like you go to a school or a university and there's one bad professor. Well, not every professor is like that. Unless they are, unless you were able to experience that firsthand. But no, I'm glad they worded that way. However, as is on full display in the videos released tonight, there are some officers who mistake their responsibility and commitment to serve with misguided power. While we commend MDPD for taking the right and necessary action to quickly release this footage, we also urge them to take equally swift and strong action against the officers who engaged in such despicable behavior. We stand beside Tyreek Hill and our players as they work to use their platform and the situation to make a positive impact in our community. We have always believed that the game of football holds a unique power to bring people together, and we remain hopeful that through the collective work of the players' organization and our community partners, we can create lasting change. Look, I know there are people out there that say stick to sports. We don't want to hear this stuff. Again, disagree all you want with the way the message was sent with Kaepernick and other players. You can't deny the message that they were trying to send, though. You can't at this point. And I think this is a bigger deal today because it happened to a prominent figure. I think that's the big difference maker here is like, I mean, not to diminish anyone in the past that's dealt with police brutality, but all the big names we've heard in the past, such as George Floyd, they just weren't big name figures. And unfortunately, George Floyd did not come out of it alive. Thankfully for Tyreek Hill, he did come out of it alive, and he's a big name. And the Miami Dolphins obviously backing him as strong as they just did it with that statement. Boy, this is a discussion we're going to be having for quite some time. And again, I'm very curious to see what former teammates like Patrick Mahomes and Tyrann Mathieu have to say, because if you guys remember in 2020, both Mahomes and Mathieu did, and they took part in the NFL Black Lives Matter video. And both were teammates of Tyreek Hill at the time when it happened. The George Floyd incident, that is. Obviously, Mathieu is now with the New Orleans Saints, but I would imagine he gets asked about this by the local media there. So very concerning. And I'm very curious to see where things go from here, because it's not just Miami police. This kind of thing happens everywhere, but not to a prominent figure. And we just took this story to a whole new level. We've been having this discussion for years with police officers and everything. So, and what's next? That's what I'm curious to know. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Thank you all for joining me here. My name is Farzin Vasugian. A big shout out once again to Serhan Dayi joining me here on this episode. Great stuff from him. Obviously, we'll be back Wednesday evening. We will break down the game between the Chiefs and the Bengals. I will give you my score prediction that night as well. Real quickly, before I get out of here, one last time, if you haven't done so already, typing this out here as I go. There it is. The YouTube channel is right there. So again, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe onto the YouTube channel. For those of you on the archive version on Spotify and Apple, it is youtube.com/@theChiefsZone. If you just go to YouTube and type the Chiefs Zone, it'll be the first thing that comes up. So make sure you guys check that out. Appreciate you guys subscribing, downloading the podcast, all that good stuff. I'm Farzin Vasugian. I'm out. I'll talk to you all later. Take care.